The day the letter arrived, I knew my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. My name is Aiden Whitmore, and I had just returned from a quiet morning walk when the postman handed me an envelope heavier than usual. The return address read, Ms. Liora Fenwick, attorney at law. My grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, had passed 3 weeks ago, yet somehow her influence on my life refused to end. The envelope's weight felt symbolic, almost ceremonial. I could hear the faint rustle of paper as I carefully opened it, revealing a crisp letter inside. The words were deliberate, leaving no room for interpretation. You are requested to attend the reading of my grandmother's will in person. All necessary arrangements have been made. Your presence is required. Even now, reading it again, I feel the unease settling in my chest. It wasn't just the formality of Lawyer Reed's will that unnerved me. It was the subtle hint of anticipation hidden between the lines. My grandmother's estate had always been the subject of whispered family secrets, a delicate tension woven through generations of Whitmores. I had never been particularly close to Clara and Derek, my older cousins. Clara Whitmore, meticulous and ambitious, always seemed to measure her worth by comparison. Derek, clever and calculating, had a knack for seeing opportunities in moments most would overlook. Then there was Max, our golden retriever, my grandmother's constant companion for over a decade. Max wasn't just a pet. He was a silent observer of family gatherings, a warm presence that everyone ignored until he wagged his tail in quiet judgment. That evening, I could not sleep. Thoughts of inheritance stories swirled through my mind. Would Clara and Derek get the estate? Or would my grandmother, in her own enigmatic way, have left some secret behind? The house felt emptier without her presence. The lingering scent of her perfume in the hallway, the faint sound of her laughter echoing in the library. But there was also a sense that something awaited us, carefully orchestrated. The next morning, I arrived at Fenwick & Associates. The city was unusually quiet, a soft fog curling around the streetlights. Inside the office, Clara and Derek were already seated, each radiating a mixture of impatience and anticipation. I noticed Max sitting calmly beside me, his golden eyes surveying the room with an intelligence that bordered on human. Then she entered, Ms. Liora Fenwick, poised and exacting. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, her sharp gaze surveying us as if measuring every thought before it surfaced. In her hands, she carried a thick envelope, sealed with care, as though it contained not just property, but decades of truth and revelation. Good morning, she said, her voice calm, smooth, and almost hypnotic. We are gathered here today to honor the final wishes of Eleanor Whitmore. Her words lingered, a soft but undeniable weight in the air. The reading began with minor bequests, small donations to local charities, gifts to staff who had served my grandmother faithfully, and personal mementos to distant friends. Each item was detailed meticulously, reflecting the care and precision of a woman who had always planned her legacy with deliberate foresight. But then, Ms. Fenwick reached the final section. Her hands moved slowly, deliberately, and the room seemed to hold its breath. She lifted her eyes from the document, letting a pregnant pause stretch across the polished mahogany table. There is one final directive, she said, each word measured and deliberate. The primary inheritance, including the estate, financial holdings, and personal effects, is to be entrusted to a person who is not human, but who has been a lifelong companion to Eleanor Whitmore. Clara gasped. Derek's jaw tightened. I stared at Max, and Max, as if understanding the significance, tilted his head, ears perked in attentive curiosity. Ms. Fenwick continued, Max Whitmore, Eleanor's golden retriever, shall inherit the estate in full. The provisions she has set forth include the care, housing, and maintenance of the estate, under the supervision of a trusted human liaison, to ensure her wishes are carried out faithfully. The room erupted, not with shouts, but with stunned disbelief. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Derek's fingers drummed against the table, a rhythm of barely contained fury. And I felt a hollow shock that I could not fully comprehend. The inheritance had gone not to blood, but to loyalty, love, and the quiet presence of a dog who had never demanded recognition. Ms. Fenwick's calm gaze swept across us. Eleanor Whitmore's decision may surprise you, but it is deliberate. Those who wish to contest the will may do so through the proper channels, but the moral weight of her choice cannot be ignored. You will find that her intentions were guided not by whim, but by a keen observation of character and integrity. As the meeting adjourned, I could not stop staring at Max. Somehow, the dog had become a symbol of everything my grandmother valued: responsibility, loyalty, and the quiet strength of living a principled life. And though my cousins whispered furiously amongst themselves, plotting, scheming, I felt an inexplicable sense of clarity, an understanding that this inheritance was about more than wealth. That night, I returned home with Max by my side. The city lights glimmered softly against the fog, but in the quiet of my room, I began to read through my grandmother's letters, journals, and notes. Already, hints of her reasoning emerged: carefully concealed guidance, subtle instructions, and moral lessons embedded for anyone willing to see beyond entitlement. I realized then that the estate, the inheritance, and Max's new role were not just about property. They were a mirror reflecting our family secrets, a test of character, and an emotional journey that would challenge every assumption I had ever made about wealth, love, and responsibility. Little did I know. The next steps in honoring my grandmother's unusual legacy would take me deep into truths I had never expected, and would change the way our family saw loyalty, inheritance, and even Max himself. The morning after the will reading, the Whitmore estate felt different. The house, once alive with whispers of family secrets, now carried a weight of disbelief. Clara and Derek had stormed out in near hysterical protest, leaving me and Max in the quiet aftermath. Even the staff seemed hesitant to speak, unsure how to address a situation where a dog had become the unexpected heir of everything Eleanor Whitmore had meticulously accumulated. Max, oblivious to human outrage, patted quietly beside me as I reread the documents Ms. Fenwick had left behind. My grandmother's handwriting was precise, almost exacting, detailing not only the inheritance, but also the responsibilities attached to it. The letters revealed a woman who had thought decades ahead, observing character, noting behavior, and ultimately rewarding integrity over bloodline. Clara, relentless in her pursuit, had already begun scheming. She sent texts, emails, and even letters to Ms. Fenwick, questioning the legality of the arrangement. Derek, cooler, but equally determined, consulted with lawyers he hoped could find loopholes. Their efforts were fueled by entitlement, not morality, and it frustrated me to watch their obsession overshadow the deeper lessons of the inheritance. I couldn't help but think of Max, sitting calmly on the rug by the fire, his golden coat gleaming in the morning sun. To him, nothing had changed. He would still greet the mailman, nap in the study, and accompany me on walks. Yet through Eleanor's foresight, he had become the guardian of the estate. I realized then that the inheritance was never about wealth. It was about loyalty, responsibility, and the quiet observation of character. Over the next few days, Ms. Fenwick guided me through the provisions. The estate was vast, with gardens, cottages, and valuable financial holdings. Every section of the will outlined how Max's caretaker, in this case me, was to ensure that Eleanor's vision was upheld. This included proper management of funds, charitable contributions, and daily oversight of the estate's operations. Max, naturally, had veto power in Eleanor's eyes, a symbolic gesture of trust and recognition for his decades of companionship. I began organizing the estate according to the will's specifications, each task revealing more about my grandmother's values. Her journals described her hopes for the property, that it would remain a sanctuary for animals, a refuge for the community, and a place where emotional storytelling, the lessons of her life, could continue through actions rather than words alone. Clara and Derek, however, refused to accept the moral lesson. Their confrontations grew more frequent and sharper, fueled by jealousy and disbelief. One evening, Clara barged into the main hall, hands shaking with anger. "Aiden! This is absurd!" she snapped, pacing across the polished floors. "You can't seriously expect us to believe Eleanor would leave everything to a dog. What kind of Will story is this?" I stood my ground, Max calmly seated beside me, his gaze level and almost knowing. "Clara," I said firmly, "this isn't absurd. It's deliberate. Grandma saw something in Max, loyalty, consistency, responsibility, that she didn't trust in any of us. This inheritance isn't about entitlement. It's about integrity, character, and care." Derek, leaning against the doorway, interjected coolly, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. "So what? We just accept that a dog is in charge? That we are powerless because he has fur?" I shook my head. "No, Derek. We accept that Grandma's values mattered more than our expectations, and Max is not in charge. He is the symbol of the lessons she wanted us to learn: responsibility, patience, and respect for her life's work." Their anger simmered, but I could see cracks forming. The more they tried to argue, the more the estate's purpose became clear to me. Max had inherited not just wealth, but a moral compass, and through him, Eleanor's principles would continue. Every gift, every directive, every instruction was designed to test character, not satisfy greed. That night, Max and I walked the gardens, the moonlight casting silvery patterns across the flower beds. In the stillness, I felt the weight of Eleanor's final lesson. Inheritance isn't merely about who receives, it's about who can honor it. And through a dog, she had ensured that her life's work would be preserved with loyalty, care, and ethical responsibility. As I returned to the estate, I realized the story was just beginning. Clara and Derek would continue to challenge the arrangement, attempting to bend the rules in pursuit of what they considered their birthright. But I had already seen the power of my grandmother's design. Through Max, Eleanor had orchestrated a tale of hidden family truth, patience, and deliberate judgment, an inheritance story unlike any other, waiting to unfold in real life. And as I prepared for the days ahead, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The lessons embedded in the will, the morality, and the unexpected heir would challenge all of us, changing the way we understood family, responsibility, and the true meaning of wealth. Days passed, and word of Max's inheritance began to spread through the town. At first, neighbors and local press were incredulous. A dog had inherited a multi-million-dollar estate? It sounded like a storytelling video English clip rather than real life. Yet the truth was undeniable, documented in Grandma's will, signed, sealed, and witnessed. Max, of course, remained blissfully unaware of his fame. He continued his routines: morning walks, afternoon naps, and quiet companionship. But the estate responded to him in ways only Eleanor Whitmore had planned. Gifts earmarked for charity were executed through me, and careful instructions in her letters revealed her intent for the estate to become a haven for animals, a community center, and a refuge for those in need. Clara and Derek, still simmering with resentment, escalated their efforts. They hired lawyers, sought loopholes, and even tried to call the will's validity into question. Their complaints were technical and procedural, but beneath it all, the heart of their discontent was the same: entitlement versus integrity. One afternoon, as I reviewed a set of Eleanor's letters in her study, Max curled up at my feet. Her words were striking, each sentence deliberate, revealing her careful observation of our family's tendencies and character. "Those who expect without giving will falter," one letter read. True inheritance is stewardship, not possession. I trust Max to ensure that wealth is used rightly, and that his caretaker is guided by responsibility, not desire. I realized that Eleanor had orchestrated more than a shock to the family. She had created a living experiment, a way to reveal the flaws in her bloodline and reward the quiet virtues she had observed in Max. The local community, initially skeptical, began to embrace the estate's new purpose. Max's inheritance became a catalyst for change. Neighborhood children volunteered in the gardens. Elderly residents received assistance through charitable programs funded by the estate, and animals from shelters found refuge in the grounds Eleanor had designated. Even the press, initially mocking, slowly recognized the depth of the story. Headlines shifted from ridicule to admiration. The dog who inherited millions, lessons in responsibility and integrity. Whitmore Estate transforms under canine stewardship. People were captivated not just by the novelty of a pet as an heir, but by the wisdom Eleanor embedded into her directives. Yet within the house, tension simmered. Clara continued her protests, her voice sharp and bitter whenever she confronted me. This is ridiculous, Aiden. A dog doesn't know the first thing about running finances, managing staff, or handling charitable trusts. You're just a caretaker for his whims. I met her gaze calmly. Max doesn't need to know. The estate operates under the principles Grandma established. His inheritance is a reminder that trust and loyalty matter more than desire or entitlement. Derek, quieter but no less intense, added, "So we just stand by and let him, or you, control everything. This isn't justice, it's a joke." I shook my head. Justice isn't entitlement, Derek. It's stewardship. And Grandma ensured that through Max, the estate would be managed with thoughtfulness and integrity, qualities you've both struggled to demonstrate. As weeks turned into months, the emotional will reading echoed far beyond the walls of the Whitmore estate. Neighbors, townspeople, and even former employees began to see the change. Programs funded by the estate brought food, education, and shelter to those in need. Gardens flourished, once neglected pathways were restored, and the estate became a hub for real-life story transformations inspired by Eleanor's foresight. Even Max, in his quiet way, became a symbol of loyalty and patience. Children visiting the estate would pet him, sensing the calm authority he carried. Staff treated him with gentle respect, aware that through him, Eleanor's vision was alive. He was not just an heir, he was the embodiment of her principles, the living proof of family secrets turned into lessons for all who lived under her influence. Late one evening, I found another journal tucked behind books in the library. Its pages detailed Eleanor's motivations in explicit clarity. She had observed generations of Whitmores, their greed, their ambition, their constant desire for recognition. Max, on the other hand, had never judged, never demanded, never faltered. Through him, she had created a narrative that would teach, endure, and transform, not only for her legacy, but for everyone willing to understand. By the end of Part 3, I realized the estate's story was unfolding in 3 layers: the legal inheritance, the moral inheritance, and the symbolic inheritance. Max, the dog, was at the center of all 3, a guardian of principles far more enduring than gold or land. The unexpected heir had not only inherited wealth, but had become the catalyst for change, reflecting Eleanor Whitmore's wisdom back to the human family. And I, as Max's caretaker, was entrusted with the responsibility of honoring both her directives and the lessons she had embedded in the estate's very walls.
Thank you for watching this story until the end. If you found it meaningful, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful, real stories from around the world.